And on that note, welcome to the Unlocked Podcast. We're three business owners from North Carolina, Minnesota, and Canada, and we are sharing our experiences with a hopeful opportunity to impact our industry in a positive way. And today we are going to be diving into the opportunity, sometimes dreaded topic around meetings. Is that fair?
Could this whole podcast just be an email?
Exactly.
Yeah, that was actually a good one there, Lars.
That was a great. That was
about time.
good, Lars. Just by
Well,
on occasion.
thanks, guys.
On occasion.
So, yeah.
So, we've all had these conversations before, and I know we have all been part of meetings before that we walk away from it and said, "Could that have been an email?" So, I think this is a very functional conversation that could impact your businesses. And one thing that I want to really state out as we get going into this is at any size organization, if it's 2 people in your organization or if it's 200, I feel like there's a lot of application here. And so we can try to make sure that we're communicating it at various sizes of organizations.
It's a hard thing to do well.
Meetings?
It really is. Yeah, meetings.
Why?
They're really easy to do poorly.
Yeah.
Because there's always a cross between people that just want to take up air in the world. And then the worst part is they take a lot of time and effort. And you actually have to prepare for things, isn't that?
I think that's actually...
It does
Doesn't
require
that just
some
kill
preparation.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, the difference between a quality meeting and a poor meeting. Like, they're night and day difference. Like, a quality meeting can be extremely effective, move your organization forward, and a poor meeting can just be a dreaded time suck that nobody likes. And unfortunately, I think most meetings are ran very poorly, and therefore they give them a bad rap. I think we've all probably led some poor meetings, except for Chad. I'm sure he's perfect, but it can be it can be a game changer in your business if you do it right.
I appreciate the sarcasm. Early on, when we were growing the business, we had some really terrible meetings, and when we were growing the company even more, when that head count started to increase, it was very difficult to maintain any type sense of function with a meeting, and they take on different forms. So I think the biggest thing to start off with is, how do you have effective team meetings? That's really going to be the base of it. And I'll start out with, there's a book that I read one time that really changed my perspective on a lot of this. The title is, ironically, Meetings Suck, but They Don't Have to. And it really opened up we said we were going to try not to, but we already, we're 90 seconds in. We really started, it kind of stressed the points of, okay, why do people say that meetings are terrible? What are the elements that people said meetings are terrible? And then what are the opposing elements that would make a meeting effective? So I think that's really where we should start the conversation. Is we've experienced both sides. What are your experiences on an ineffective meeting, and then what have you done to change it?
Yeah, I'll be the first to say that my meetings are probably a gong show. I'll just take a minute because I think some of my staff will be listening to this and they'll still be chuckling right now. But running meetings is part of a job. It's an actual, it takes some effort to plan ahead, be prepared. And that's a lot harder for some of us, like myself. But I go back to we're all just in Florida a few weeks ago. John Lang with Osable was talking about effective meetings, and he always does things the same way. And John's a very effective speaker, very good, I think, mentor and in charge of educating all of Osable, which is probably no easy task. But, he starts off very simply with, he asks for permission to control the room, control the time, and he sets a very clear agenda. This is why you're here. This is what we're going to get out of it. And this is going to be our key takeaways. And I think that always sets the precedent of a strong meeting. So at the very least, if you can start with that, I think that's your first step down the right path.
Tony, how have you seen effective meetings or meetings run poorly or meetings run well in your organization?
The biggest difference for us was starting with having a clear agenda and a simple agenda, having something that you follow on a consistent basis. I think, like you said, Lars, a big piece of that is making sure people understand the purpose of the meeting. We have different team meetings, and whenever we start a team meeting, and what that I mean, like if we organize a new meeting, we always want to make sure that we discuss what is the goal of the meeting, what is the outcome of the meeting we're looking to achieve, and keep that in mind as we're having discussion items. I think it's really easy to have discussions come up in the most recent meeting as opposed to the proper meeting. So we try to make sure that we're having people, bring up discussion items in the right meeting, and then if they're not the right meeting, put them in the right place so the right group of people are discussing them. But for us, we pretty closely follow the agenda laid out in Traction. Good news, I can't remember the exact order, but good news, to-dos, review OKRs and goals. Listen, I follow the agenda. I don't
we follow the same every week, and then I don't know what
but
it
yes,
is.
We have a written agenda, and we make sure to follow it, and we use the same agenda for one-on-ones and team meetings. It's basically just check in, go over objectives and OKRs, and look at to-dos, and then go review the scoreboard and go on to discussion items. And when you get to discussion items, it's issue processing. Identify the issue, discuss the issue, solve the issue. Big thing for us was making sure that we clearly outline those steps. Like we used to have discussion items and they'd get off course. And we built in a new structure of, okay, what's the background on the discussion item? Why is it here? What is the proposal of a discussion item? We found a big change in that. Once you come to a meeting with, here's what I've found, here's my proposal, instead of just, here's my problem, what should we do? Really speeds up the discussion of, here's what I want to do. And then making sure that we talk about what are next steps. I think you can get very lost in, okay, here was a good discussion, but if you don't decide what you're going to do about it, it really didn't mean anything. And a lot of times too, those discussions can kind of get a little bit long-winded. So making sure that we're keeping them on point and making sure that they're moving in a forward direction.
Yeah, it's like any game of golf with you. It's a little bit longer than anyone would really enjoy. But I know, Chad, you guys, what do you call it?
Yeah,
we won't so many golf shots. Is that why? But yeah. Chad, is it 10x? What do you, or 10x?
L10 meetings is
L10. Yeah. Well, it's a letter and a 10, but that's close.
It was very close. It was very close. So that's very similar to what Tony was mentioning. So that format is from the L10 structure. So from the book, meetings suck, but they don't have to. The main objective that they kind of communicate is the concept of no agenda, no attenda. So if I don't have an agenda and if it's not a structured meeting, then we probably shouldn't even have it. So that's one major component that we instituted. We weren't good. We had a loosely structured agenda, meaning I kind of knew what I was trying to get across to everybody, but it was not written. It was not formalized, and we changed that years ago. And it's the intentionality, especially for all team meetings. There is a written agenda. These are the things that we're supposed to be communicating. And it helped with consistency. It helped us to stay on track. And then it also, again, conveyed what's the point of this meeting? What is the reason that we are having this meeting, and making sure we keep that focus. The other thing that the book talks about is identifying the differences in meeting types. So you have informational meetings where it's just somebody that's going to stand up in front of the room and communicate out a point, communicate out a thought, communicate out a new strategy or whatever. Then there are discussion meetings where it's here's a challenge that we have. We've got to figure out a solution. So we're going to identify the different key players in the conversation and make sure that everybody can get into that. And then we have an outcome that we're going to work towards. And then you have, the working meetings, kind of similar in that L10 where there are several different people in the team that are coming to report information. So some status update meetings. And when you're going to have one, then really structuring it and identifying what that is out of the gate before it's scheduled helps to increase some effectiveness.
Do you go with a written agenda, or do you present everyone with the agenda, or do you digitally, or how do you start that?
Yeah, so it's digital at this point, right? Because you're not. So there's let me say two factors. So number one, every agenda that we do is digital, and we actually post it on our team website. It's an internal closed website, and it goes out
ahead of time.
Yeah, at least 12 hours before the meeting goes live. So everybody has the ability to review it and understand what that is. And then it's also resourced, so you can search them and find what we talked about 4 years ago if you wanted to on a particular date. That's one thing. And then we post that up on the screen and we go through it line by line. There's one meeting every month that we have as our business meeting where we review financials, and that is accompanied with a printed document that everybody has. So
that's an all team meeting, right?
Yeah, those are all team meetings for sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to finish with one thing, and then I'll toss back over to you because you mentioned it earlier. Is there's a change? I think you have to make a change as a leader in your organization. Of are meetings a hassle? Are they a thing that I feel like I need to do, or is this an intentional activity that is going to progress us as an organization? And if you get to that point, then kind of what you were talking about, Lars, is it is a hard work, and it's you have to put effort and preparation towards it if it's going to be effective. And I think a lot of times you talk to people and they're like, yeah, we tried to have meetings, but they were terrible and nobody got anything out of it. And it's most likely because it was ill prepared, didn't have an agenda, people were checked out, nobody was getting really the results that they were looking for, and so then they just cancel them and said, well, it doesn't work. Well, we put a lot. I mean, I can tell you, we put a lot of hours in preparation for our meetings because we want them to be impactful and an effort.
Yeah,
I know you
brief
guys
and focused.
may find this shocking, but sometimes I don't prepare very well. And when I used to lead meetings without preparing, it was not good. I know, shocking, right? I used to,
Really?
prep for a meeting during the beginning of the meeting. It was wonderful. It was really efficient, and definitely now have been much more intentional about being proactive and preparing for our meetings and making sure that I have the agenda in order. We use OneNote. I'm sure Chad's very fond of that product. But we just have a notebook for each team meeting that we have, and then we have notes for each meeting, and then we keep our objectives and key results in that notebook, and that's shared, and people can add discussion items throughout the week as they come up. And we just update the notes, and people can check and look at them whenever they want. And that's worked very well for us, and planning ahead of time, like Chad said, is definitely a game changer. Shocking, I know.
Yeah, that Chad is referencing from a book. You've mentioned L10 or possibly X10 in Canada. What book was that from, Chad?
It's Traction.
The L10 meeting is the Traction EOS model, where
EOS
it's a
model.
Yeah, and that is a very structured, business focused meeting where we have we're checking in on these certain things. We're reviewing performance metrics. We're reviewing the rocks or the objectives that we're working on as an organization. We do those. That's a leadership focused meeting. That's once every 2 weeks in our organization, but it follows a different type of agenda because it's a different meeting focus versus an all hands or all team meeting.
Yeah, I think that's key. That I think you just wrapped that up by saying it really depends. But if we're given a a tangible tool, Traction L10 meetings are certainly something. If you have the feeling you're not getting a lot out of your meetings, that's probably a good place to start. Is that accurate to say?
It is a good place it's going to at least create some structure. Again, the book Meetings Suck, but they don't have to is also gives you a playbook, the different types of meetings and different agendas associated with it that you could start to apply with your organization. So, Lars, for you, how are you guys? You said that sometimes they're a bit disheveled, but are you agenda focused? Do you store those agendas anywhere?
Yeah.
Scratching your face is concerning.
Yes. Yeah. Thank God this isn't a video, right? So no one can see how uncomfortable I am. Oh, God.
God, you have Matt
we
now.
took a leadership. Yeah, we took a leadership class last year as a management team. There's a few things I don't want to just reference to there, and probably just ignore your question altogether, Chad. But there's a couple.
Make a good political candidate.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll see if I can make Canada great again in a couple of years. But stay on focus here. Brief and focused podcasts. That should be the next topic here. Anyway, so the instructor, spoke about the hippo. I'm not sure if you've heard of that acronym before, but it's the highest paid person in the room, right? And if the hippo speaks too early, everyone else generally just says, "Oh yeah, right," rather than trying to solicit. And for people, certainly like ourselves and myself, for sure, it's hard to sit and listen. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge in the meetings when you're trying to get the group consensus. You're trying to no, I hate the word consensus, but you're trying to get information from everyone in the group. And if you feel you have something to say, you have to be aware, if you're the leader or a leader in the organization, as soon as you speak, it changes the dynamic of the entire group.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that was brought up that I had to be aware of, because I was bad for it. And the moderator took me aside beforehand and said, you are the hippo in this group, so I'm going to ask you not to say anything for the first 10 minutes of discussion. And I just
Now,
sat there.
were you excited about that name? Is that was that like
No, he knew he was the hippo. He didn't need anyone to tell him.
The hippo, I've been called, usually it's more of a donkey reference than a hippo reference, but Tony, you'd mentioned OneNote, some crappy Microsoft. They don't sponsor the podcast, right? Microsoft?
No,
Not
they're
yet. Maybe
not one of our
someday,
sponsors just yet.
that ship has sailed.
Yeah. So one of our crappy tools that you mentioned there, Tony. But I'm curious. I'm going to dive into what we started doing at a conference recently. But I want to focus in on tools. Let's try and make this, fairly tangible for people, because meetings are hard. We give them a book to start with.
Oh, this is great. This is going to be really good, Lars. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for blessing me, Mr. Pope.
I'm excited. I forgot about this. This was great.
This, man, whoever does the editing for this podcast needs more money. You hear that? Whoever's done the edited, you should be getting more money for this. Cut out all Chad's crap. Anyway, so the tools, I was mentioning the hardest part for me, like the preparation ahead of time, is one thing. And that being ready to prepare it and communicating that beforehand, that was the second thing that the teacher in our class talked about, was because some of us are extroverted, mainly 2/3 of us on this podcast, for instance, the third one is more introverted, right? And so it's important, where Chad, you and I can just, BS without any agenda. It's important for people that tend to think before speaking. They want to know the information beforehand so they can prepare it. And that's where the agenda is important.
Yeah.
And that's why, for me, the agenda, I'm like, I don't really need one. I know what I'm going to say. Yes. But for probably half to 3/4 of my team, the agenda is super important, because they want to think about it so they're prepared to speak in the meeting. So we use a similar tool. We use Slack. We post it in a Slack channel. We have a meeting that way. But if we go to the tool from a couple weeks ago, so how did this come about, Chad? We were
sitting in a breakout session, and we were, I don't even really, probably not paying
clearly
attention
my
or
idea.
brainstorming.
That's all I remember.
Obviously, yes, it was
my
most
idea,
likely,
and you then took it as your own,
and made it better. But it was it's the concept of how do we dictate, because you're in an open meeting environment. How do you capture the transcript from it? And because I don't know about you guys, but we're using a lot of AI tools in virtual meetings to capture meeting notes and summarizations and all that. So the concept was, well, how do we do this in this breakout session when someone's talking
in person?
In person, yeah.
Right. And how do you? It's hard, because I find, as I'm taking notes, I'm focused on my notes and what I'm thinking, and then I'm missing the actual part of the breakout. In a university lecture, they'd say, don't take notes, sit and listen and try and understand, and then go through the material after. Right. So that's kind of what led us to just a very simple tool on our iPhones. And I think Chad might have come up with this.
Yeah, we just opened up. Well, there was multiple things. I first tried Google Docs and the voice to
just
text,
straight dictation.
Yeah, and it just wasn't working well. It kept timing out. So after just a few more attempts, we got to the voice memo on just an iPhone, right? And it has
native
live.
app.
Yeah, it's a native app, and it has live transcripting. It's made to do voice memos. So we just literally laid it on the table and captured the transcript of the meeting, and we're able to take that in and throw it into an AI generator to do a summary of the notes.
It's nice of you guys to share that.
Layman's terms. Oh, did you not get that, Tony?
Well, Lars, you came up to me and were like, hey, we should try to record this in Teams. And I tried that once, and it worked horrifically, and no one ever updated me. So, it's fine.
Well, I'm just looking right now. I mean, this is riveting radio here, but I'm looking right now at the course called Chad's KPIs. And I just used the voice memo and set it up near so I could hear Chad's KPI conversation. In the bottom left corner, there's a little quotation mark. I clicked on that. Then I just press and hold it, copy and paste, and then paste it in the ChatGPT app, which is just a free app. Downloaded it from the App Store. It took about 20 seconds. Pasted it in there and said, summarize this into 5 bullet points, and hit transcribe. And within 10 seconds, it had better summary of what Chad was trying to say than what he actually said. So
most likely,
certainly more concise.
But it was an amazing tool, and I was like, dude,
great.
We've cracked the code. So that's the most recent thing we've been doing, and so certainly encourage it for your team meetings. Just set the phone on the table, record what is said, and then let an AI tool, whether it's Gemini, GPT, or Copilot, any of these, just to summarize it for you. It works. It's incredible how well it works.
It's actually brilliant. Very good.
Hold on a second. Did he just say it was brilliant? Yeah.
He was talking to me.
For sure.
Just wish someone would have told me about this. Gosh.
So
I'm sitting here with Teams trying to get a meeting recorded and gave up after 2 sessions. And
I
wasn't innovative enough.
Teams a long time ago. Here's the thing. The other major benefit of this, Lars, is taking, say for instance, I'm a busy business leader and I need to prepare for an upcoming meeting, and there are a few things that I need to get communicated. And so, maybe it's not the easiest thing for us to sit down at a computer and type out an agenda, but you could literally take that same exact process, take the voice memo and record while you're driving down the road, walking outside, whatever. Hey, these are the things that I need to talk to the team about tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. 20 minutes later, take that same transcript and throw it into a thing and say, summarize this and create an agenda for tomorrow's meeting. Boom, the agenda's done.
That's a fabulous idea. Gosh, this is
just yesterday. Here's another one. Just yesterday, at some point, we're going to have to stop just to laugh at Tony's internet connection again, right?
Luckily he's at the office this time. So
the office, and it's worse. I'm at the other office here.
It's amazing the technology that Minnesota has. It's not just nice weather, but yesterday we were talking specifically about onboarding some new technicians in the field, and a process of I think it was like the on-call process, but we didn't have anything on paper. I'm like, okay, we got to get something written down, and I just decided, you know what? So I brought in a couple of my senior guys and said, I'm going to record this conversation. I said, can you guys tell me how the on-call process works? And we just had a discussion, a 3-way discussion of how it works, recorded it all, took it, plopped it into ChatGPT, and said, summarize the process for the on-call scheduling for Calgary Lock and Safe. And it gave me like it wasn't absolutely perfect, but it gave me 10 bullet points.
Yep.
That was the outline. Now it only took me like 3 minutes to put it together as compared to probably 2 hours.
80% of the way there, you can get it cleaned up pretty quick. So Tony's going to have to give us a summary at the end of the podcast of all the notes that he's taking, because it seems like he keeps having a light bulb popping on the top of his head. So, getting back to the thing about meetings. No, hold on. We've got to have a whole episode around AI. And
AI, for sure. Yeah.
Because, that's what a lot of this that we just talked about, that there's a lot of benefit and tools that we're just completely, maybe we're using natively or we're even bypassing, but there's a whole episode on that.
I think we're getting old. I think that's what's happening. I had this moment yesterday.
Well, you definitely are.
This is cool technology. Guys are like, yeah, we do this all the time. Did I just get old? I went to bed on Wednesday and I woke up Thursday old.
I think it was a couple years ago. But so we'll do an entire episode on AI and practical uses of it. It'll be an amazing case study. Tony,
so I got an antiquated tool that's a good recommendation. About a month or two ago,
not including the pencil you're using right now.
Yes. So okay. We took a culture index program. I don't know. We'll talk about that at some point. But 6 months ago, and Eileen talked about people that have high intuition or high inventiveness have a popcorn machine, and you have all these ideas. And I've noticed that when I sit in meetings and I have an idea, I would always want to blurt it out and interrupt the meeting and go down tangents. And a month or two ago, I started actually bringing a notebook to meetings with me. So every time I had a thought, I actually wrote the thought down as opposed to interrupting the meeting, and that helped with the hippo rule that you're talking about, like making sure that
30 seconds ago when Chad was going to say something, you just blurted out. You're like, "Hey, I got." Is
Well,
that
that's because I had it written down. I've been trying to say it forever. Couldn't hold it in any longer.
Let's get a burst.
Anyways, but seriously,
Okay.
like taking
Yeah.
notes is something like that is still really like little things that you want to remember. Especially if you're trying to not be the hippo, like, or if you are the hippo and you're trying to not
Right.
dominate a conversation, like, I've been trying to lead more with letting others talk, and but if I have a thought, make sure I write it down and save it so I don't forget it. But save it so that it still can be said later. But I started carrying notebooks around, and it's a lot more helpful than just. To me, it's easier to write stuff than type on a phone. But it's been a helpful tool. That's a very simple tool that I think is overlooked nowadays.
So I'm going to throw this question at both of you here. How do you avoid unnecessary meetings? It's I think the main talking point here is we're just simply talking about, the why behind meetings. But I think that the why is almost, directly inverse to, why not? So, how do you, how do you just, instead of having the meeting, how do you just have the email? Or how do you make it impactful?
Yeah, I really go back to that agenda. If you can create the agenda first and get it out ahead of time. So if you created that rhythm or culture in your organization, and I would say for all team meetings, we've got that nailed. For smaller group meetings, that's not been a structure that we've been very consistent with. But that's really where the heart of it comes down to is if you can write the agenda ahead of time and maybe you have it's got to be sent out 24 hours in advance, you may eliminate a lot of those meetings because you've figured out how to document or communicate it before the meeting has to happen. A meeting exists if you need to have dialogue back and forth between people to accomplish or to learn,
So is that the only time you have a meeting, is when it's a two-way dialogue? If you just have to announce some information and get it through, do you still hold a meeting for that?
Well, no, if you need to announce information. So,
well, if you're just trying to,
That's a
I
good
want to
question.
say that, Tony has got terrible internet and I just want everyone to know this. Do we hold a meeting about that, or do you just broadcast that out? Or if we want discussion?
For us, we try to do continual education around communication and when stuff should be emailed, when stuff should be chatted, when stuff should be a meeting. To me, there's two things. One is educating people on when you should have a meeting and when not, and make sure they understand the pros and cons. But two is about once a year or so, I kind of audit like what meetings are we having and why, and make sure they make sense. And if they aren't making sense, change them, eliminate them, add them, and kind of mix things up a bit and just make sure that they don't get stale and that they're not just we have this meeting because we have it. Is there actually still a purpose for it, and can it become more efficient? So taking a step back at least once a year and examining what sort of reoccurring meetings do you have and are they necessary?
Well, maybe switch gears here a little bit then. How about one-on-ones? Because we've talked about meetings, and I know, Tony, you just reminded me. You're the king of one-on-ones. You are the one-on-one king. I think
Sure.
that means the same thing, but I'm giving you some time to think here.
Glad you said that
Or
twice.
if you want, I can toss that to Chad. But one-on-ones, do you guys have them? What are they for? What's your thoughts on a one-on-one meeting?
We've encouraged every manager to set up one-on-ones with every one of their employees, at least on a monthly basis, ideally a weekly or bi-weekly. The managers that do them weekly find them the most productive. They have them for 15 to 30 minutes a week. My one-on-ones with my managers tend to get a little longer because they tend to be more one-on-ones plus like departmental meetings. So if I'm meeting with our systems manager, I'm meeting with her on how's she doing, but I'm also meeting with her on how her team is doing and talking about the strategic goals of her team. So I kind of do two in one there. But a lot of our managers, it's just simple. How is everything going? Anything frustrating you? Any highlights of the week, successes, frustrations, and then check in on to-dos or commitments from last week. Talk about any discussion items and create new to-dos and commitments for the following week. And we use those for check-ins, but then also on a quarterly basis, we make sure that we do, quarterly OKR planning in those, and then annual reviews in those, and that sort of thing. So to us, it's a consistent time to just get feedback from employees, give feedback to employees. And we found that the more consistent they are, the less interruptions you have during a day. If I know I have a meeting with you next Wednesday, I'll put it in the notebook and I'll wait to talk to you about it then, as opposed to popping in your office every day and talking to you about stuff. So we found that to be a more productive use of time. And a lot of our managers, when we, Chad was the first person to tell me to start to do one-on-ones, and now I think he regrets doing that. But uh, no head nod there.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't realize how many direct reports that you had, but
Yeah,
I still believe in them.
You have 40 people in your company, Tony.
yeah.
40 one-on-ones is a bit much. But.
Yeah, when we started promoting managers at first, a lot of them were hesitant. Oh, I don't want to do this every week. I don't want to do this every other week. And actually, I just let them. I said, okay, you can do it every other. And a couple months later, they switched it to going every week, because they found that repeated cadence of weekly is just so much more effective, because it can be quick, but then people start actually. If you go every other week or longer than that, it becomes too late, and then people forget about it. But the intentionality of knowing I'm going to meet with my manager every week. If I have an issue, I'll bring it up then. And also, if there's an issue that a manager has with the employee, it's not a surprise. Like, hey, I got to pull you in my office and talk to you about something. It's, hey, by the way, I noticed this last week.
Yep.
You could please, keep working on this. And it's just a productive conversation. A good book on anything one-on-one related is Radical Candor. Just intentional conversations in the moment, making sure you're having frequent check-ins with employees, and being there to support them, and also, guide them in whatever they're working on.
So one-on-ones, I started doing them about 8 years ago with all my direct reports.
8 years ago? Or did you say
about 8 years ago? 8 years ago. Yeah, wow. Because I found that it came out of reading a book at some point, because I was becoming overwhelmed with the I can't remember the term, but basically having constant interruptions throughout the day to come and bring a conversation to me, an impromptu meeting, a ad hoc, that's the word I was looking for, ad hoc meeting, where it's just all of a sudden we got to talk about this right now. And I'm like, I'm just being bounced around like a pinball, and I can't get the things done that I needed to get done because of that. So as a fix to it, it was for my direct reports, a structured weekly cadence. This is when we're going to meet. This is the time frame we're going to meet, and this is the agenda that we're going to go off of. Anything, like Tony was talking about, anything that needs to be added in there that's non-critical, you add that to the agenda. We'll address it at that meeting. If it's critical, you can still come. Let's have that conversation to get that handled. Non-critical items go on the agenda. And so the lesson that I learned from it was it automatically started to slow down a little bit of the urgency of everything. Not everything became urgent. Only the things that were critical needed to be discussed then. And then a lot of times what I found out over the years were problems that were added to the agenda that were non-critical were actually resolved before they got to the one-on-one, because they had an opportunity to resolve them themselves. So we would talk through the coaching. Well, explain to me how you solved that problem. Explain to me, what the resolution was. And so, that's awesome. I think that was a great solution, whatever. And so it was building that coaching mechanism around these are the muscles that we want to strengthen. The things that I've learned through one-on-one, and some of my experience and some of the things that I've read, is one, they have to have a regular cadence. It's got to be on the calendar on purpose. A lot of times, to Tony's point, is some of my management team has made one-on-ones a very passive or non-committal situation where it's, have you been having?
I talk to them every day.
Correct.
I talk to them every day.
Everything's great. And so, no, it's got to be on the calendar on purpose, and it needs to be consistent. It needs to matter. If it starts to not matter, and it's okay for people to just not show up, or cancel it frequently, there's a problem. It's either the team members checked out and they're not engaged with whatever their role is, or you have checked out on them. And so it's not a good handoff either way. So having a consistency of that cadence has been vital. And then establishing whatever that cadence could be. It could be weekly. It could be every 2 weeks. Whatever works, whatever gets the effect. But it needs to be an agenda and on purpose. What about you, Lars? How are you doing it?
Well, I'm terrible at it. So what I did was I work with people that are good at it, and I stay out of their way.
There you go.
That's I've fought it. I fought it for a long time. I kind of subscribe to Elon's methods of I hate meetings, no meetings.
Mm-hmm.
If you have something to say, bring it up and let's get it dealt with.
Sure.
Try and deal with it the first time you can. However, I do take part. I run our quarterly meetings, which is more of an inspirational thing. We bring in a breakfast. We all meet at 7:30. We have breakfast together and we talk about the past quarter, what we've done, talk about the future quarter, what's happening, any major announcements, anniversaries, those kind of things. So I still take part in that, but it's really not my strength to have a tactical 40-minute meeting to bang off, or 20-minute meeting, any of those. It's not my strength. I want to jump ahead a little bit because Tony mentioned radical candor.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make sure we got this in without running out of time here. So you're talking about Kim Scott. That's the book. I think she's the author. Probably should have looked that up before I name dropped
Yeah,
her.
no, that's her. Came from Google, I think. I'm pretty sure she worked at Google for a while.
Yeah, that's a new website that searches stuff. So Kim Scott, radical candor, it is not code for being a dick. I think the candor part only comes with, before reading that book, I used to talk about putting money in the piggy bank. Right. And I think the concept, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, if people understand that you're speaking from a place of caring, if you have a personal level of caring, and that doesn't mean you have to high five and hold hands and walk along the beach, on the weekends. But if your manager or your team knows that you care about them at a personal level and genuinely want what's for the best, it makes it a lot easier to have those tougher conversations. And you can be direct and set an expectation. Because that is one thing I believe in, is when we agree on an expectation, we agree on a result. I expect that to happen both ways. And if I don't do it, I expect you to call me out. That was my little piece of radical candor that I brought into our organization, is find that place of caring and then speak to it. Because if you have one without the other, you just come across as a dick. So you have to do it in that order.
Yeah, and part of the creating that regular cadence, in my opinion, helps with that. So a lot of times the natural tendency for humans is to go fix the problem when it's a problem and address it then, and then you create this kind of sensitivity in your team and your organization that anytime a meeting is called, it's for bad. Well, if you have a regular cadence where you're just saying, "Hey, Lars, how's life going? What's new? Hey, I saw you did this the other day. That's awesome," and we're creating that conversation. And then every third meeting, it's, also, here are the 3 things that I think you need to get better at. Like, creating an agenda for a meeting. You need to really put effort in that because it's going to create results for you. It's taking it with, you're getting that 60% of that positive reinforcement, and you got the 40% of the things that we need to work on collectively. So I think that there's a lot of value in it, but it's all comes back to, from my perspective, consistency. I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes I can falter into a level of inconsistency because it's whatever is the newest thing, the shiniest thing, the thing that I need to put my attention to now. And if I haven't created that consistency on my calendar, then that thing just, I forget about it. And it's not that it's not important. It's just it's not important to me at that particular moment.
You have something that's more important to her.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good point too. If you're trying or starting with one-on-ones, give it 2 months. You're not going to see the effects of the trust build until you give it that time.
Yeah.
Don't try it for 2 or 3 weeks and say like, oh, these are taking me 10 minutes. Like, figure out what questions you want to ask. Read Radical Candor. That gives you 3 pages of questions to ask to get people talking, and give it time.
And because the other person's probably also sitting there going, what is this about?
Right.
And I'm going to be a little reserved for the first couple of times anyway, because I'm not really sure what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, Chad, a couple of years ago, you and I were doing something similar. You would walk around the business park.
Yes.
You'd host your meetings and go for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing something similar. We have a Tim Hortons. That's a coffee company in Canada.
I've heard
we have those here.
Probably haven't.
We do.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're part of Canada, Tone.
The better part of it.
We're not getting there anyway. But
we're great.
I found that taking you're great again. Some would find that stay focused here, Lars.
Yep.
Just that change in atmosphere,
Yes.
I found was critical to starting a new routine. We went for a walk, and therefore it wasn't just us sitting around a boardroom table. It wasn't just us, standing at the coffee machine.
Yeah.
And it was like an intentional act that just kind of cleared our minds. Okay, what are we doing? Oh, just checking in to see how you're doing, man.
Yeah.
I had a guy that was inventorying his van just yesterday, and I just popped by. I was like, "How you doing, man?" He's like, "Oh, I'm good. How you doing?" Yeah, I'm fine. I just haven't seen you in a while. What have you been up to? He's like, "Oh, yeah. We just had a conversation for a few minutes."
Mm-hmm.
And and then walked in this morning, and he was the first guy. He's like, "Hey, man, how you doing this morning?" I'm like, good to see you. Right? That's really all it takes, and it's really an effective part of leadership. I'm not sure exactly how this ties into meetings necessarily.
Well, it's the walking meeting, and Steve Jobs was famous for doing this because
Who was that?
He's a guy did a computer
Oh,
thing
he's
one time.
the turtleneck guy. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he was he was famous for doing this around the Apple campus because one, it took away that, I guess, that inhibition, that challenge of, I'm sitting on the other side of the desk. This is a very formalized meeting. So we've taken that away. It's a little more informal, and there's like proven psychology and science around the walking and kind of becoming a little more relaxed. And the other side effect of it is, and Steve Jobs talks about this, is it also limits the time frame of the meeting. So we're going to take 3 laps around for us, it's 3 laps around the business park. That's roughly a half an hour. That's going to be our conversation. And a lot of times people aren't really excited about taking the 4th lap. So it's a time limiter, but it's also, it gets the energy moving differently because I'm moving, my blood's flowing differently,
Right.
and I can think freely.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. The same thing as
I was going to say, it gets a bit tricky up here in the winter for that, but
Yeah, it's obviously getting colder, and that's why your internet's so much slower than ours. I was going to say one of the tricks that
it's frozen.
I know he's frozen in. Oh my God.
I've been at 38% upload this entire recording. Like, I've never seen it that low.
Well, maybe if you turn off your camera, that'd help, and that would help everyone. But what I was going to say is, another trick, walking around the business park is one thing. Going for coffee. When we are having those formal meetings, I like to sit beside the person. It's a different dynamic, and you'll recognize it right away. If you have a tough conversation to have, sitting directly across from someone is very confrontational. Shoulders are back, and it's posing for a fight. And I've had, when I know I'm going to have one of those tough conversations, I'll just pull up my chair beside them, because it's way harder to stiffen up and get that fight or flight mentality started when you're sitting directly beside a person.
I like that.
So that was one. I'm glad that made your notepad tone.
So
that was
definitely. So
basically,
next time you come in,
I was going to give.
Next time you
stand side by side, then you'll know that something's going to be.
Yeah.
It's a slight delay because of the internet issue, but I was going to make a belly to belly reference, but that's a couple of episodes ago. Okay. As we start to land this plane, Tony, what are the top 3 takeaways that you've got that you want to share with everybody?
Number 1 is use my iPhone for recording and meeting minutes. I mean, that's a game changer. 2 is to my handwriting's so bad I can't read my notes. That's not good. I really like recording a conversation with yourself to make notes, like as you're driving. Like that's awesome. Like, hey, here's my thoughts. Turn this into text using ChatGPT for that. I know that really doesn't relate to meetings, but I also
it can help to prep a meeting agenda.
It creates an agenda for a meeting. Yeah, absolutely.
For me, I've done walking meetings from time to time. I think you made the comment that reminded me the importance of them from just getting out and doing something different and getting your legs moving and not just sitting down. Trying to get back to doing more of those, and that'll be great coming into December here. But also the side-by-side thing, making sure you're not always sitting across the table. It's something that I've thought of in the past and kind of gotten away from.
Not always belly to belly. Sometimes it's side to side. Yeah, I got.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chad.
No, you were going to say something, Lars. I was
know
pausing for you.
You looked excited. Yeah,
no, I was
just
getting ready to
something
land
you.
the plane. I was going to land the plane, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, bring us down.
Here we go. So here's the closing on it. Is one, effective meetings, an agenda is required. State the purpose. Have a regular cadence. Keep it on a schedule. Don't have them just scattered and all over the place. Try to keep it as concise as possible, and then get that agenda out in advance, because not everybody likes to think on the fly, and some people need the opportunity to prep and think and prepare their thoughts in association with it. I think is a really good summary of today's conversation.
Don't be the hippo. If you're not the hippo, make sure the hippo knows who the hippo is. Would be things I would add to that. And something that I'm not sure we've actually said, but it's just kind of dawned on me as we were talking about it. This isn't having meetings, having effective meetings isn't a natural thing. It's something that requires work. It requires effort.
Yeah.
And that's, for me,
especially
if
for
I
Lars.
for me, if I ever get stuck having to have a meeting again, I will take the moment and remember you two. Well, let's be honest, I'll forget about you two, but I'll remember that, hey, I should try and put a meeting agenda together, and I'll just talk to myself while I'm wandering around the business park, and then I'll let ChatGPT send the agenda out to my team.
And then in a couple of months, you'll tell us about it and be like, hey, guys, I just had this great idea. It'll be awesome. All right.
Yeah. I was just sitting belly to belly one day and came up with this.
Another great episode. All the information, summary of this is on our website, unlockedpodcast.com. Make sure you check that out. We've got a new episode coming up very soon. Now, guys, here's the thing. I think there's two really good conversations that we can have in the future episodes. We need to determine. So, Tony, I'm coming to you because you've got to make a decision on this.
I can do that.
Culture index, or practical uses of AI in business.
Ooh, let's go AI.
Get to decide.
Let's do AI. I'm ready for it. I've been using it since our first episode, and I got some, I don't know if great applications, but I'm ready for that episode now.
All right. Well, I'm excited about it. I
last time we talked about it, I'd never touched it, so I was not ready then.
The delay is amazing.
I've been using it for a whole 7 weeks, so I'm ready now.
This is very like golfing with Tony.
It is.
Right?
It is.
This is on the golf course every time. Just when you think you're ready, there's a slight delay, and it's Tony dawdling away. So, Chad, land the plane for the love of God.
It was great to chat with you guys today. We'll see you next